Welcome back to my next video. So today I'm finally doing something I've wanted to do for a very long time, shoot a video on how to buy a used RV. I know a lot of you really want to be in an RV, and I've known way too many of you who bought a clunker. And so today we're going to talk to Deb, who is actually an certified RV inspector, and we're going to inspect Brian's spanking new, spanking new, but it's a little not quite new. 1977.
1977. Yep.
1977 RV, and you've been in that RV for 12 years.
Absolutely. Yep.
And you've been putting work and sweat equity into it for 12 years.
Absolutely. And I would have loved to have an inspector when I bought it. I did not. I had a friend mechanic that helped me out, but didn't have anyone that knew the systems, that could test the systems, so that would have been very helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
So today we're actually going to walk through Brian's RV, and Deb, you're going to explain to people what to look for and how to find it.
Right.
Now, it's important that we say that with a trained eye, you'll see things that the average person won't.
Correct.
So they really should, we want them to do as well as they can, but if you can possibly afford it, you really need to hire an inspector. So how would they hire you if they were interested?
So they could go onto my website, debsrvservices.net, and they could get a hold of me there, or look up one of my social media accounts, Facebook or Instagram. If they're in a different area than I'm located, they can also go on to nrvia.org, and that will find them an inspector in their area.
And a certified inspector.
Correct.
You've been to school for inspecting.
Went to the National RV Training Academy in Athens, Texas, and was certified as an inspector.
So, you know, anyone can look at things, and there are certain common sense things we can all spot, but it's a lot more than just that, isn't it?
It definitely is. We're doing I think it's over 500 points of inspection on an RV.
Wow.
We're testing out every single system. We're looking at every nook and cranny of it. We can see discoloration, water damage, bad tires. We're going underneath. We're going on top of the roof. So we're looking at everything about the RV.
And that's not cheap, because you just described a lot of work,
Right.
A lot of time, a lot of training.
Yep. It can be a little bit pricey when you get into the bigger rigs. The smaller one you have, the less money it's going to be. And the type, you can do a life safety check, or you can go all the way up to a premier inspection. And they can range from $400 to $1,500, depending on what you're getting.
Right, and my recommendation the whole time I've had a channel is don't ever buy a vehicle without inspection. So every used vehicle I've bought, my vans and pickups, I took it to a mechanic. I usually paid, that's a lot cheaper, it's a lot smaller job. I always paid $150 or more. I would do that 2 or 3 times. I've spent $500 to buy a pickup, and I have never regretted a penny of that. I still don't to this day. If I'm buying a new vehicle tomorrow, a used vehicle, I'm getting it inspected. So how much are these? It's worth it. It's just really worth it, and in the long run. I have a friend who bought a $10,000 used RV, didn't pay for the inspection. She was really competent, really intelligent, used common sense, looked everything over, bought it. Within that first year, she had paid another $10,000 in repairs, and with the second year, it was so flawed, she essentially just gave it away for parts. And that I've seen that horror story over and over. So this is going to be the best money you'll ever spend to pay for a real tech. But if you just can't afford it, Debbie, you're going to walk us through and tell them what they should be looking for.
Absolutely.
And we've got the perfect vehicle for it.
Yes, much to my chagrin. So, yes.
But let's back up a little bit there and say that how much did you pay for, you've had it, how long have you had your RV?
I've had it for 12 years.
And I met you, I think, that year.
Yeah, 5 months into it, I met you, or 4 months into it, I met you.
So I've known Brian all this time.
Yep.
And we were just talking about this the other day. How much have you put into it over the last 12 years?
Over the 12 years. So I bought it for $3,300. And then I put, solar on it, things like that. I added some other items to it. And so I was up to about maybe $4,500. So still pretty cheap. And then I have a running tally on an Excel spreadsheet of sorts that all the money I've put into it, including like oil changes and repairs and things like that, and including a new engine. I've had a new engine, and I've had to fix the engine several times. But all told, I think I'm into it about $11,000. And so less than $1,000 a year. I've been pretty lucky, I feel.
So you can buy an old RV, I know I tell the horror stories because there's so many of them, but you can buy an old RV and get a real winner. Now, we should say right away that your services are not including the engine and drivetrain.
Correct. We can do fluid analysis if they would like to get that done, which can do like kind of like a blood test of the oil transmission. We can check the generator oil. But no, we're not trained auto mechanics. So that's a separate service.
But then, like I said, that's about $150. You want to take it to a mechanic and say, give me a mechanical inspection. So what we're going to do is do a walk around on the outside of what you would do if someone hired you to do this. If Brian had hired you to do this.
Okay.
And again, her trained eye will see things that we never would, because it's that seeing things over and over and over again that gives you that skill. And you have that skill, but well, at least you'll have be better prepared if you can't afford it. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and do that?
Okay.
That's good.
Let's go. Yep. So one of the first things that I like to inspect are the tires. You want to look for the DOT date so that you know how old your tires are. And you can always ask the owner, but sometimes they're not aware that their tires are older than they originally thought. So you look for this date and you can find DOT, and then you kind of scroll over here and you can see where it says 12/21. The second 2 digits is the year. The first 2 digits is the week of the year. So it's the 12th week of 2021. That way you know these tires are nice and new. You want to kind of keep your tires around, look at changing them after about 5 years. You can also look and see that even if the tires are showing within 5 years, you could still have the tires rotting and you can show age. You would look along the sidewall. Now these are nice fresh tires, so they're not aged, but they would show little tiny cracks in the sidewall. And then you can also look at the tread itself. Some people use the trick of putting a penny in there, and if you see the head, then it's worn, so that's not good. You also want to make sure that the wear is even on both sides of the tire. So you can look at that by kind of just glancing underneath and to the side and just kind of looking at the tire head on and seeing how much wear it has on it.
Now, sometimes the DOT code is a code and it isn't a number. Has that changed?
Well, what happens is it's probably on the inner side of the tire. So sometimes when you look at these, there's 1 or 2 tires that actually show the date. And the reason why it's not showing the date is because it's on the inside, and that's more difficult to look at. So as an inspector, we have to get underneath and we have to verify every single date of every single tire.
Oh, wow.
So that's one of the benefits of having somebody else do the work.
Yeah, they're crawling around under
yes,
there.
Yes. We also check inflation, make sure that it's at the proper PSI. So we look at overall the whole tire.
And you can see where this starts to add up to a lot of time.
It does. It's hours of work. You know, throughout the whole inspection, it takes about sometimes 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
So going back to my vehicle and my tires, something that you do want to be concerned about or just be aware of is that this is an unusual size tire on some of these older vehicles. They're 16.5-inch rims. When I went to replace the tires on this, I had only one option for tires because they don't make them. There's not any options out there. They make one brand, one version of it because they're just not, they don't make very many of them these days. So many people said you can switch this over to 16-inch rims or 17-inch rims, and that would be a good idea because with these tires, they are more expensive. It just so happens that in the area that I was at, when I had a tire blowout, I had to replace all my tires, and I didn't have that option.
Right. It's just something to be aware of and watch for.
Absolutely.
And you also want to make sure that you're looking at what the manufacturer recommends for the tire size and compare it to the actual tire. So you can usually find that sticker located somewhere on the RV. They can be around the door or the driver's side door. Sometimes they're kind of inside the little panel there. So the next thing that we're going to inspect is the sidewall. We're going to kind of look and see how that's looking. Are there any dents, scratches, delamination, or how the sealant looks? So we're going to kind of take an overview of Brian's RV and see what's going on. He has up here, it looks like there was there's a dent up there. It looks like there was something that scraped. So if I was writing an inspection report, I would note that there's kind of a dent and a scrape along the sidewall. Now, Brian has told me a little bit about what happened here, and that's something that you can always do. You can talk to the RV owner and you can get the story behind what you see. You can see little dents along the side, you know, here. little scratches. I mean, these are things that are not red flags, but they're just, you just make yourself aware that, it, you know, and it's an older vehicle. You can look at the sealant. And I know that Brian and I talked, and he said that he did some of his own sealant along the corners and along the whole sidewall. And you want to just make sure that you don't find any cracks or holes in the sealant when you're looking at it. So I don't see any holes here. I don't see any cracks either. So right here we can see that there's some cracks in the sealant. And so that might be an area that needs to be addressed. And so you can make note of that, you know, if you were to buy this RV, you would need to have that service. Probably, you know, have some new sealant. You can get an RV tech to do that. It's a simple job. I'm noting here, I can see that there is a little hole in the screen and some kind of, you know, damage there. Maybe the dog. Look around the light fixtures, the door fixtures. You can look up here at the awning and you can kind of take a look. I already know that we cannot test the awning because it's not working. So that's something that, you know, you would typically, you can ask the owner to take out an awning or open up a slide so that you can see how they work. But here you can see there's even some tears in the awning itself. So definitely is something that would need to be repaired or replaced. Okay. And then here's another example of the sealant that Brian had some, he did this himself and he went over everything. You know, there's a little bit of cracking in here and I would definitely note that. But again, this is an older RV, so some of these things are to be expected. And those aren't deal breakers. You have to look at your sealant. You want to look at that every year. And you, especially if you're out in the Arizona hot sun, you want to have that sealant replaced, you know, so you want to have like a tech come take a look at your roof and all your seals and make sure that that's what keeps the water out. You know, and as an inspector, we go underneath too. And one of the things that we like to look at is make sure there's no leaks. So we would take note if there's any kind of leaking underneath the RV. So we can, but let's go ahead and we're going to go on the roof and we're going to take a look there and see what things to look for. So the next thing that I'm going to do is inspect the roof. And as a person that's a potential buyer, you want to make sure that you have the permission of the owner to get up on their roof. You also want to make sure that you don't get on the roof if there's water or rain, ice, snow, or you're not comfortable getting on the roof. That's one of the reasons that we are hired as inspectors to come up here and do all the dirty work for you. So one of the first things I do is I kind of, I'm on my knees around the roof and I look for areas that are soft spots. And this has a little bit of a soft spot in here, which could mean there's potential water damage. So you want to make note of that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look around at the joint caps and look at all the sealant and just see if there's cracks in it or holes. Sometimes around the areas of screws, there can be little holes. And you want to make sure that you address those because that's a potential water, an area water can get in. I don't really see much around here, but I think we can find some in other places to show you. This vent cap here was taped off. So I would ask the owner what happened with that as well. The awning, you can kind of look from above and see that there's some tears in the fabric here. So that would need to be replaced. We already know that the awning is not working correctly, but if it was, and this was an issue here, we would just want to make note that this would need to be replaced. So you want to consider that when you're buying an RV. This area here used to be a Max Air fan, but there was a bear that destroyed it, I found out. So Brian covered this as a temporary means to keep it covered until he replaces the fan. Okay, so I would still look around and look at the sealant. So I see like there's a little bit of a hole over here. So if he wants to look, there's a little bit of a hole in the sealant. So you want to find any area like this as a possible area of water intrusion. Okay, so you're looking for little things like that and cracks. So you want to check any area, like even with the solar panels, any area where you have this bolted down, you want to check again for holes in the sealant because this was drilled into the RV. You want to make sure that this is sealed properly. Okay, so right here, this looks good. I don't see any holes. This here, was old sealant, and you can see how it's cracked.
So one of the things you found was soft spots on the roof. If one of our viewers finds a soft spot, what's their next step?
Well, what they want to do is ask the owner about if anything happened, if there was any water damage that occurred. You can also take a look on the inside of the RV in the area where it was on the roof, where it was soft on the roof, and you can look up on the ceiling and see if you see any discoloration or anything there. And then you could bring that up to the owner and see if they offer any, anything on what happened or how they repaired it. But again, it's really, your discretion if you want to buy an RV that has soft spots or there's been water intrusion.
Other than pull the roof down on the inside, there's no way to know what's going on. You just know damage has occurred.
Yes, but you can also, if you do buy the RV, you can always hire a certified technician to come out, and they can help you with some of the repairs or taking a look at it to see if they have any further opinion on, what's going on there, or if they can fix it for you. Well, sometimes it's a great red flag when you ask somebody to, if like as we're getting hired as inspectors, if you ask them, would you be okay with an outside inspector coming in, and they tell you no, that's a big red flag that there are things wrong they don't want found out.
Right.
So
yeah, it sure is.
And the other thing is when you inspect or when you're going to look at an RV, see if they have any paperwork on repairs that they've had done or maintenance. That's going to tell you what kind of owner they are.
Well, Deb, thank you so much for sharing that your knowledge and experience about doing the outside inspection. And Brian, thank you for loaning us your gorgeous 77 motorhome.
Excellent. It always hurts a little bit when I hear like, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong.
Right.
But I knew that going in.
Yep.
And the main thing is that now that you're armed with knowledge, that you know these problems. You've found some dry rot. You've found some panels that are breaking loose. You found some soft spots on the roof. That's a negotiating point. Or when you buy it, you go in knowing these are expenses coming up. Can I afford them? Mm-hmm. And so that's just everything, that you know those things. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now, folks, we're going to end this video here, and we're going to start immediately another video. We're going to go inside and look at the inside and some of the systems. And so come right back for that video, and we'll do the same thing again. We'll actually do an RV inspection on the inside. So I'd love to hear from you. What was the most surprising thing to you? What was new to you that you learned today, and that you'll make sure that if you ever buy an RV of any kind, you know now to look for? You hadn't thought of that before. So if you'll share that with us in the comments below, or have you bought a RV without inspection and all of a sudden you find this big problem that an inspector would have found? So share that story with us. So we'd like to hear from you, so each of us are better armed to buy our next RV. So if you folks got anything out of this video, like us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll talk to you later. Bye now.